My mother convinced my brother's fiancée not to invite my wife, claiming she'd cause unnecessary drama. When I found out, I confronted her about it. Hi, everyone. I never thought I'd end up writing here, but I'm desperate for advice. My name is Ethan, I'm 38 years old, and I've been married to my wife, Amanda, for 7 years. Life has been steady and uneventful until a few days ago when I received an invitation to my younger brother Ryan's wedding. Sounds great, right? Except there was one glaring problem. Amanda wasn't invited. At first, I didn't notice. The invitation itself was stunning. One of those fancy, embossed cards with gold lettering. Our names were elegantly displayed at the top in fancy cursive, Mr. and Mrs. Ethan Carter. But when I checked the RSVP card, I saw there was only one seat reserved. I actually laughed, thinking it was some kind of printing error. That evening, over dinner, I showed the card to Amanda. "You're not going to believe this," I said, passing it to her. She frowned, examined it closely, and asked, "Where's my name?" "Exactly what I thought," I replied, chuckling nervously. "They must have made a mistake. I'll call my mom tomorrow." Amanda wasn't amused. She set the card down and gave me a look. "This isn't a mistake, Ethan. Your family's never liked me, and you know it." Her words stung, mostly because there was some truth to them. My mom, Elaine, had always been critical of Amanda. She'd once called her too opinionated and accused her of making everything about herself. My dad, on the other hand, adored Amanda, but he passed away 2 years ago. Since then, Mom's opinion seemed to dominate the family dynamic. Still, I didn't want to assume the worst. The next morning, I called my mom. She picked up after a few rings, her tone cheerful. "Hi, sweetheart," she said brightly. "Hey, Mom," I replied, trying to sound casual. "I got Ryan's wedding invitation yesterday. It's beautiful, but I think there's a mistake." "A mistake?" Her voice lost some of its warmth. "Yeah, it only lists one seat for me. Amanda's name isn't there." There was a pause so long it made my stomach twist. Finally, she said, "Oh, well, the guest list was really tight, Ethan. You know how expensive weddings are these days." I frowned. "Mom, she's my wife. You can't just leave her out." "What's going on?" "I don't want to get into it," she snapped. "This is Ryan and Emily's day. If you have a problem, take it up with them." Then she hung up. I stared at my phone, stunned. That night, I told Amanda everything. Her reaction was a mix of anger, sadness, and, most painfully, resignation. "I told you," she said softly. "It doesn't make sense," I insisted, pacing the kitchen. "Ryan's always been fine with you. He's never said anything bad about you to me." Amanda raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't mean your mom hasn't gotten to him. She's been trying to edge me out since the day we got married." I didn't want to believe it, but what other explanation was there? I decided to call Ryan directly. "Hey, bro," he answered cheerfully. "Good to hear from you." "Hey," I said, doing my best to sound upbeat. "Got your wedding invitation? Looks like it's going to be an amazing day." "Thanks, man. I'm so excited." "Yeah, about that. I noticed Amanda's name isn't on the RSVP. What's going on?" The silence was deafening. When Ryan finally spoke, his voice was strained. "Look, Ethan," he began. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you this, but Amanda isn't welcome at the wedding." It felt like a punch to the gut. "What are you talking about?" "It's not just me," he said quickly. "Mom and Emily feel like she causes too much drama. We just want the day to be about us, not about her." "What drama?" I yelled. "She's done nothing but try to fit in with this family. And this is how you treat her?" "Calm down, Ethan," he said defensively. "It's not personal." "Not personal?" I snapped. "She's my wife, Ryan. How could it not be personal?" When I hung up, I was shaking with anger. Amanda found me sitting on the bed, my head in my hands. "What did he say?" she asked softly. I told her everything. She didn't cry. Amanda rarely does, but the pain in her eyes was unmistakable. "So what are you going to do?" she asked. I didn't have an answer. The days that followed were a blur of tension and frustration. I called my mom again, hoping for clarity, but she doubled down on the limited guest list excuse. Emily even texted me to say, "It's nothing against Amanda personally. We just want to avoid any potential issues on our special day." Potential issues? What the hell did that mean? I started to wonder if I was missing something, some hidden reason my family had turned against Amanda. Or was this just another case of my mom's controlling nature influencing everyone else? Amanda, to her credit, didn't want to make things harder for me. "If you want to go without me, I'll understand," she said one night. "Are you kidding?" I replied. "How could I go to a wedding where my wife isn't welcome?" But even as I said it, I felt the weight of the decision pressing down on me. When the news spread to extended family, reactions were mixed. My Aunt Diane called, outraged. "They didn't invite Amanda? That's ridiculous." "I know," I said through gritted teeth. Some cousins even confronted Ryan, but he was firm. "It's our wedding," he told them. "We decide who's there." Amanda's face went pale when I told her. She sat on the couch silently before whispering, "I knew it. I knew this would happen eventually. Your family has always hated me." "That's not true," I said, sitting beside her and taking her hand. "This isn't about hate. I'll figure it out." She pulled her hand away. "It's about me never being good enough for them, Ethan. Your mom's made that clear from day one." I wanted to argue, but Amanda wasn't wrong. My mom had always found subtle ways to undermine her, commenting on her cooking, criticizing her outfits, excluding her from family plans. And now it felt intentional. I promised Amanda I'd get to the bottom of it, but I had no idea what I was walking into. I didn't want to make the decision alone, but Amanda made it for both of us. "I'm not going," she said firmly when I brought up the family picnic. "I'm not walking into a room full of people who've already decided I'm the problem." I couldn't argue. She was right. It would have been awkward at best and utterly humiliating at worst. So I went alone, the tension building in my chest as I parked near Uncle Dan's expansive lawn. The moment I stepped out of the car, my cousin Amber waved me over. "Ethan, long time no see," she said, pulling me into a quick hug. Amber had always been one of the few family members who treated Amanda kindly. She even stood up for her once at Thanksgiving when my mom made a nasty remark about Amanda's career. "Hey, Amber," I said, forcing a smile. "How have you been?" "Oh, same old chaos," she replied with a laugh. "How's Amanda? I was hoping to see her here." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't even set foot in the house yet, and Amanda's absence was already under scrutiny. "She's good," I said quickly, trying to steer the conversation away. "She couldn't make it today." Amber gave me a look that screamed skepticism, but before she could press further, my mom appeared out of nowhere. "Ethan," she exclaimed, her voice dripping with fake cheer. "You made it. Come on, your brother's inside." I followed her into the house, my stomach churning. The scene inside was exactly what I'd expected. Laughter, a table overflowing with food, and animated conversations in every corner. But what I didn't expect was the glaring reminder of Amanda's exclusion. Every other significant other in the family was there. Ryan's fiancée, Emily, was laughing with Aunt Diane in the living room. Amber's boyfriend, Greg, was helping Uncle Dan at the grill. Even my teenage cousin Lily had brought her new boyfriend. Everyone's partner was included, except mine. It didn't take long for someone to bring it up. Aunt Ruth, never one to shy away from a confrontation, cornered me by the drink cooler. "Where's Amanda?" she asked, her sharp eyes narrowing. "She couldn't make it," I replied, trying to sound casual. "Really?" Ruth pressed, her tone dripping with suspicion. "Or was she not invited?" Her question hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. Before I could recover, Ruth shook her head and walked away, muttering something about family politics. As the afternoon dragged on, I overheard conversations that made my blood boil. In the living room, my mom was speaking with Emily and Aunt Diane, her voice just loud enough for me to catch snippets. "It's better this way," she said. "Amanda always manages to make everything about her. This day is supposed to be about Ryan and Emily, not drama." I clenched my fists so tightly around my beer bottle that I thought it might shatter. How could she say that? Amanda wasn't the one creating drama. She was the one being targeted. Outside, I caught part of a conversation between Ryan and my cousin Matt. "It's not like Ethan isn't invited," Ryan was saying. "If he skips the wedding over this, that's his choice. Honestly, though, I'm relieved Amanda's not coming. She's just a lot." Matt gave an awkward chuckle. "Yeah, weddings can really bring out the worst in people." I couldn't take it anymore. I stormed back into the house, and found my mom in the kitchen, chatting with Amber and Emily. "Mom, we need to talk," I said, my voice shaking with barely contained anger. Amber and Emily exchanged nervous glances and quickly made themselves scarce. My mom, however, looked completely unbothered. "What is it, Ethan?" she asked, her tone dismissive. "We need to talk about Amanda," I said, lowering my voice. "I know what you've been saying about her, and it needs to stop." My mom sighed, the picture of exasperated innocence. "Ethan, I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb," I snapped. "I just heard you telling Emily it's better this way." "Better for who, Mom?" "Certainly not for Amanda. Or me." "This isn't about you," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "It's about keeping the peace. Amanda has a way of stirring things up, and we didn't want that on Ryan's wedding day." "Stirring things up?" I repeated, my voice rising. "She hasn't done anything to deserve this. You're treating her like some kind of villain because she won't let you walk all over her." "That's enough," my mom barked, her tone icy. "I don't have to explain myself to you. This is Ryan and Emily's wedding, and they made the final decision." I wanted to scream, to smash something, to make her understand how cruel and unfair she was being. But I knew it wouldn't make a difference. My family had already made up their minds about Amanda, and nothing I said would change that. By the time I left the picnic, I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train. The people I thought I could rely on, my mom, my brother, had made it painfully clear where their loyalties lay, and it wasn't with me or my wife. As I drove home, I wrestled with how to tell Amanda everything I'd heard without breaking her heart even more. When Mom and Megan made it clear Sarah wasn't welcome, Megan's demeanor turned ice cold. "This is my wedding, Ethan. My day. I shouldn't have to feel uncomfortable because of your wife." "Uncomfortable?" I shot back, anger rising in my chest. "Sarah isn't the one making things uncomfortable. You and Mom are." Ryan, who had been silent until now, finally spoke, his tone placating. "Ethan, calm down. This isn't about taking sides. It's about Megan feeling safe and happy on her wedding day. That's what matters most." "Safe?" I repeated, incredulous. "What do you think Sarah's going to do? Start a fight? Cause a scene?" Ryan shrugged, his gaze fixed somewhere on the table. "Look, we've made the decision, okay? Sarah's not invited. I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but Megan's feelings are more important." I stared at him, barely able to process his words. "She's your sister-in-law, Ryan. She's my wife. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" "It does," Ryan said quickly, as though the words could smooth things over. "But this is about boundaries. Sometimes you have to put your partner first." I shook my head in disbelief. "You're unbelievable. Both of you. You're throwing Sarah under the bus for no reason, and you expect me to just go along with it?" Megan folded her arms across her chest, her expression unyielding. "You don't have to go along with it, Ethan, but this is the decision we've made, and it's final. If you can't respect that, maybe you shouldn't come to the wedding either." Pushing back my chair, I stood, my heart pounding with anger. "Maybe I won't," I said, my voice tight. Ryan looked at me then, guilt flickering in his eyes, but his tone stayed firm. "Ethan, don't do this. Don't let this ruin our relationship." "You've already ruined it," I said, turning and walking out of the cafe without looking back. When I got home, Amanda was waiting for me, her face tense as I stepped inside and tossed my keys onto the counter. "How did it go?" she asked finally, her voice tentative. I sat down across from her, rubbing my hands over my face. "They're not budging," I admitted. "Megan's claiming you said something offensive at the engagement party 2 years ago. Ryan's backing her up, saying her feelings are more important than anything else." Amanda's face crumpled, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw tears welling in her eyes. "I don't even remember what I said," she whispered. "Because you didn't say anything wrong," I said firmly. "They're blowing this out of proportion because they don't want you there. That's all it is." She wiped her eyes and shook her head. "I told you this would happen, Ethan. Your family doesn't want me around. They never have." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Amanda, listen to me. I'm not going to that wedding without you. If they can't respect you, then they don't respect me either." She looked at me, her eyes full of gratitude and pain. "I don't want to come between you and your family, she said quietly. You're not, I said, my voice resolute. They're doing this, not you. She nodded, but I could see the doubt lingering in her expression. And honestly, I wasn't sure I believed it either. The betrayal from my family weighed on me like a lead blanket in the days that followed. I replayed every conversation with Ryan, Megan, and especially my mom, and each time my frustration grew. These were the people who were supposed to love and support me unconditionally. Instead, they were tearing my life apart with their petty, baseless judgments about Amanda. It wasn't just their words that stung, it was their silence. Not one of them reached out after my confrontation with Ryan and Megan. No calls, no texts, no attempt to mend the growing rift. It felt like they'd already written me off, lumping me and Amanda together as outsiders, as problems. One evening, my cousin Amber called. She'd always been one of the more reasonable members of the family, and I'd hoped she might offer some comfort. But as soon as I answered, I could tell this wasn't going to be the conversation I wanted. Ethan, she began hesitantly. I just wanted to check in. I heard about everything. I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. Yeah, I bet you have. So, what's the family consensus? Am I officially the villain of the year? Come on, don't be like that, she said, her tone softening. It's just a complicated situation. Complicated? I repeated, my voice rising. It's not complicated, Amber. They're excluding Amanda for no reason. How is that anything but cruel? There was a pause on the other end of the line. Look, she said finally, I'm not saying they're right. I just think maybe you could go without Amanda. You know, just to keep the peace. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious? You think I should just roll over and accept this? Let them treat Amanda like she doesn't matter? It's not about that, Amber insisted. It's about family. Sometimes you have to pick your battles. Family, I snapped. Family doesn't treat people like this. Family doesn't make you choose between them and the person you love. Amber sighed. I just don't want you to cut ties with everyone over this. It's Ryan's wedding, Ethan. It's one day. One day that's going to define how I see all of you for the rest of my life. I said, my voice shaking. If you're not willing to stand up for what's right, then maybe you're part of the problem too. Amber didn't respond, and I hung up before she could say anything else. The isolation became unbearable. Amanda tried her best to be supportive, but I could see how much this was hurting her too. She hated that I was stuck in the middle, and I hated that my family had put me there. One afternoon, desperate for clarity, I decided to visit my Aunt Diane. She'd always been a straight shooter, and if anyone could give me some perspective, it was her. When I arrived, she greeted me with a warm hug and a concerned look. Ethan, she said, leading me into the living room. You look like you haven't slept in days. Probably because I haven't, I admitted, sinking into the couch. This whole thing with the wedding, it's killing me, Aunt Diane. She nodded, pouring me a cup of tea. I've heard bits and pieces. Your mom's been talking about it a lot. Of course she has, I muttered. Let me guess, she's painting Amanda as the villain? Diane hesitated. She shared her opinions, sure, Aunt Diane said, carefully choosing her words. But, Ethan, you know how your mom is, she's always been a bit controlling. That's putting it lightly, I muttered, clenching my jaw. But this goes beyond her. Ryan and Megan are just as bad. They're acting like Amanda is some kind of monster when she hasn't done anything wrong. Diane sighed and sat down across from me. Ethan, I'll be honest with you. I don't agree with what they're doing. Amanda should absolutely be at that wedding. She's your wife, for God's sake. But your mom and Megan have made up their minds, and once Karen sets her sights on something, it's nearly impossible to change her mind. I clench my fists, the frustration boiling over. So what am I supposed to do? Just accept it? Let them win. That's a decision only you can make, Diane said gently. But let me tell you something. If you don't stand up for Amanda now, it's going to set the tone for the rest of your marriage. Your family needs to understand that she's your priority. Her words hit me like a freight train. She was right. If I caved now, it would send the message that they could keep pushing Amanda out, that they could keep testing the limits of what they could get away with. That evening, I made my decision. When Amanda got home from work, I was sitting at the kitchen table, the wedding invitation in front of me. What's that? She asked warily, eyeing the card. It's the RSVP, I said. I'm writing decline. She stared at me, her brow furrowed in concern. Ethan, are you sure? This is your brother's wedding. If you don't go, it's going to cause a lot of problems. I don't care, I said firmly. If they can't respect you, then they don't respect me either. I'm not going to a wedding where my wife isn't welcome. Tears filled her eyes as she crossed the room and hugged me tightly. I don't deserve you, she whispered. Yes, you do, I said, holding her close. You deserve better than how they've treated you. And so do I. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. I knew the fallout from my decision would be ugly, but I didn't care. My loyalty was to Amanda, not to a family that had turned its back on us. The next morning, I called Ryan to tell him my decision. He didn't take it well. Ethan, this is ridiculous, he said, his voice strained. You're seriously going to skip my wedding over this? I'm not the one being ridiculous, I shot back. You and Megan are. You've made it clear Amanda isn't welcome in this family, and I'm not going to stand for it. Come on, don't do this, Ryan pleaded. We're brothers. Don't let this come between us. You let this come between us, I said coldly. You, Mom, and Megan. This was your choice, not mine. There was a long silence before Ryan spoke again, his voice colder now. I hope you don't regret this. I hope you don't either, I replied before hanging up. When I told Amanda about my final conversation with Ryan, she looked both relieved and worried. This isn't going to end here, Ethan, she said quietly. Your mom's going to make sure of that. She was right, of course. I just didn't realize how bad it would get until a few days later when my mom called. Seeing her name pop up on my phone made my stomach churn, but I knew avoiding her would only make things worse. Hello, I said, bracing myself. Ethan, she began, her tone sharp and icy. I just spoke to your brother. He told me you're refusing to come to the wedding. That's right, I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. If Amanda's not welcome, then I'm not coming. There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice trembled with anger. How dare you do this to your brother? To this family? You're the one creating all this drama, Ethan, not us. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Me? I'm not the one excluding people from family events. I'm not the one making baseless accusations about Amanda. You're blowing this out of proportion, she snapped. This is about Megan's comfort, not about excluding anyone. Don't give me that, I said, my anger finally boiling over. You've hated Amanda since the day you met her. Now you're using Megan's so-called comfort as an excuse to push her out. That's not true, she shot back, her voice rising. I've always been polite to Amanda, even when she's been difficult. Difficult? I said with a bitter laugh. You mean when she dared to have an opinion? When she didn't let you walk all over her? Watch your tone, she snapped. I'm still your mother, and Amanda is my wife, I said, my voice steady with resolve. She's supposed to be part of this family, but you've never even tried to accept her. Maybe that's because she doesn't belong in this family, my mom said, her words cutting like a knife. She's always been an outsider, Ethan. You just refuse to see it. I hung up without another word. My hands were shaking, and my chest felt tight. It was one thing for my mom to be difficult, but to hear her outright say Amanda didn't belong in our family? That was unforgivable. In the days that followed, things only got worse. My dad, who usually stayed out of conflicts, called to try to reason with me. Ethan, he began, his voice tired. Your mom's really upset. She feels like you're turning your back on the family. I'm not turning my back on anyone, I said, my frustration spilling over. But I'm not going to stand by while you all treat Amanda like garbage. Your mom doesn't hate Amanda, he said, trying to sound reasonable. She just has a hard time with people who don't fit into her vision of the family. And that makes it okay? I asked. She's been trying to push Amanda out for years, and now she's finally found a way to do it. And you're all letting her. Ethan, it's not that simple, he said, his tone defensive. Megan didn't want Amanda there. What were we supposed to do? You were supposed to stand up for me. For Amanda, I said. But instead, you all sided with Megan. It's her wedding, he said, his voice rising. You don't ruin someone's wedding over a personal grudge. Then maybe you should be having this conversation with Mom. I shot back. Because she's the one who made this personal. After that, he didn't have much else to say. He tried to shift the conversation to small talk, asking about work and the house, but I wasn't in the mood. I ended the call as quickly as I could. The final blow came a few days later, when Amber called me again. At first, I thought she might be trying to smooth things over like she had before. But what she told me instead left me stunned. "Ethan," she said, her voice hesitant. "I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but you need to know this," Amber said, her voice low and hesitant. "This whole thing with Amanda, it wasn't just Megan's decision. Your mom was the one who started it." "What are you talking about?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. "I overheard her talking to Megan at the engagement party," Amber admitted. "She told Megan that Amanda was too opinionated, that she always made things about herself. Mom suggested it might be better not to invite her to the wedding." It felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. "Are you saying Mom planted this idea in Megan's head?" "Pretty much," Amber said. "Megan wasn't entirely on board at first, but your mom kept pushing. She said it would be for the best, that it would keep the peace." The pieces fell into place, and everything suddenly made sense. Megan's supposed discomfort, Ryan's insistence that it was about keeping the peace. It had been my mom pulling the strings all along. "Why didn't you tell me this sooner?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended. "I didn't think it would go this far," Amber said, sounding regretful. "I thought Mom would back off eventually. But I was wrong." "Yeah," I said bitterly. "You were." That night, I told Amanda everything. She listened quietly, her face calm, but her eyes betrayed the pain she felt. "I knew it," she said when I finished. "I knew your mom was behind this." "I'm sorry," I said, my voice breaking. "I should have seen it sooner." "It's not your fault," she said gently, reaching for my hand. "But, Ethan, you need to decide what kind of relationship you want with your family. Because as long as your mom has this kind of control over them, nothing will change." She was right, of course, but that didn't make the decision any easier. The next day I called my mom. This time I didn't hold back. "I know what you did," I said as soon as she picked up. "Excuse me?" she replied, her voice icy. "I know you're the one who convinced Megan not to invite Amanda. Don't bother denying it." There was a long pause before she sighed. "Ethan, you're being ridiculous. I was just trying to help." Megan was already uncomfortable, and I gave her some advice. "That's all." "Advice?" I snapped. "You sabotaged my wife. You made her feel like she doesn't belong in this family. And now you're trying to pin it all on Megan." "You're overreacting," she said, her voice taut with defensiveness. "I did what I thought was best for everyone." "No," I said firmly. "You did what was best for you. And now you've torn this family apart." "Don't you dare put this on me," she yelled. "You're the one turning your back on us. You're choosing Amanda over your own family." "Because she is my family," I said, my voice steady. "And until you can accept that, I want nothing to do with you." There was silence on the other end, and then the call disconnected. A few weeks later, I got a call from my mom. I hesitated before picking up, but part of me hoped she might have changed. "Ethan," she began, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I want to say I'm sorry." I sat there, waiting for more. When it didn't come, I asked, "Sorry for what, Mom?" "For everything," she said vaguely. "For the wedding, for how tense things have gotten. I just want our family to go back to the way it was." Her words hit me wrong. "The way it was?" I repeated. "You mean with you undermining Amanda and treating her like an outsider?" "That's not what I meant," she said defensively. "I just miss how close we used to be. That closeness was built on me ignoring how you treated Amanda," I said flatly. "I'm not going back to that." "I'm trying to apologize, Ethan," she said, exasperated. "I don't know what else you want me to say." "I want you to take responsibility," I said. "You didn't just get caught up in this. You orchestrated it. You encouraged Megan to exclude Amanda. And now you're giving me this half-hearted apology, expecting everything to be fine." There was a long silence. Finally, she said, "I'm sorry you feel that way." That was it. That was all she could muster. "I don't think you understand how much damage you've done," I said, calm but resolute. "Until you're ready to truly apologize to Amanda, there's nothing more to talk about." Not long after, Ryan reached out. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him for coffee. "Ethan," he said nervously as I sat down. "Thanks for coming." "I wasn't sure I would," I admitted. "What do you want?" He took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot, and I realize I could have handled things better. I should have stood up for you and Amanda. You're my brother, and I should have had your back. His words caught me off guard. So what stopped you? Megan, he said, looking down at his coffee. She was so adamant about not wanting Amanda there, and I just wanted to make her happy. I didn't think about how it would affect you. That's not good enough, I said. You let her exclude Amanda, your sister-in-law, because it was easier for you. Do you have any idea how much that hurt us? I do now, he said quietly. And I'm sorry. I know it doesn't fix things, but I mean it. I studied him, searching for sincerity. He looked genuinely remorseful, but I wasn't ready to forgive him. If you're really sorry, you need to tell Megan this was wrong. You need to make it right. He winced. I've tried, he admitted, but she won't budge. She still thinks Amanda is the problem. And you're okay with that? I asked. You're okay being married to someone who refuses to admit she was wrong? Ryan didn't answer, which told me everything I needed to know. I stood, grabbing my coat. I appreciate the apology, but until Megan can admit her part in this, there's nothing more to say. Ethan, wait, he started, but I was already walking away. When I got home, I told Amanda about both conversations. She listened, her expression a mix of sadness and resolve. It doesn't sound like anything's going to change, she said. I don't think it will, I admitted. But that doesn't mean we have to keep putting up with it. What do you mean? She asked, her eyes searching mine. I mean, we need boundaries, I said. If they can't respect you, then we're done. No more family events. No more trying to force a relationship that isn't there. We focus on us. Amanda nodded slowly. I've been waiting for you to say that, she said softly. I didn't want to push you, but I've felt that way for a long time. Then it's settled, I said. We're done bending over backward for people who don't care about us. That night, we talked about our future. It was painful but freeing. A few weeks later, we began planning a fresh start. What if we moved somewhere new? Amanda suggested one evening. Start fresh. Build our own life, far away from all of this. The idea terrified me, but it also excited me. Where would we go? We've always talked about traveling, she said. Maybe we take some time to see the world and figure it out from there. The more we talked, the more it felt right. We sold our house, packed our belongings, and set off on a new adventure. Our first stop was Italy, a place Amanda had always dreamed of visiting. As we walked hand in hand through the streets of Rome, I felt a peace I hadn't felt in years. For the first time, I wasn't looking back. I was looking forward. We didn't know where we'd end up, but that was the beauty of it. We were building a new life on our terms. And for the first time, we were truly free.